Hey everyone, so today I wanted to do a video talking about my creepy stories. You guys seemed to enjoy the last video I did about this, so I thought I would make a second one. And literally in the middle of filming this video, my camera, my T3i Canon camera, just completely went crazy. The screen just scrambled, and I tried to change the battery, I tried to turn it off and on. The screen's completely black, it won't work, and it's very, very odd. It was in literally the middle of me filming this creepy stories video, so hopefully I'm not haunted or anything. So I am filming this on my vlogging camera, so if the quality isn't as good as it normally is, that is why. With that note, and starting off like that, I'm going to go ahead and tell you about some creepy things that had happened to me. So for a little bit of background history on this first story, my parents really love buying old houses and fixing them up, especially ones that have a lot of potential, they're really big but they just are kind of old and need a lot of fixing up. My mom really just enjoys picking out the tile, and I think she secretly wishes she could be an interior designer. And my dad's really good at gardening and just redoing backyards and stuff, so they've always done that and they've always really enjoyed it. And so with that, they always had a lot of open houses. And what an open house is, if you aren't familiar with it, basically it's if you are selling your house, you'll have an open house where the realtor is there, and then people that are interested in buying your house can just come by and look through your house. And the homeowners are not supposed to be home, I guess, because they want people that are interested in buying it to be able to feel comfortable talking about the things they like and don't like about the house without worrying that the people that own it are listening to them. So anyways, my parents had an open house, and I believe it was from 1 to 4 o'clock or something, which is pretty typical. If you look in the newspaper on Sundays, you'll probably see open houses around you. At least I know that's what they do here in Texas. And there are a lot of creepy stories of people going to open houses to specifically look through medicine cabinets to try to take and steal prescription drugs. I know there are also ones of people that go in and try to steal things or try to case out the house so they know which doors to use if they want to rob you and stuff. If you look up open house horror stories, I'm sure you'll find a bunch of creepy stories like that. But anyways, what happened in my story was a little bit weirder in my opinion. So my parents got home from the open house, everything went well, the realtor left, and they began to cook dinner. And like I said, I was a little bit younger, so I remember this, but I didn't quite know what was going on at the time. But I remember my mom was cooking dinner, and she heard a noise and she got a little bit scared, and my mom naturally is kind of someone who's easily scared. So my dad didn't really think much of it, but he said he would go check on the noise, and it sounded like it was coming from upstairs. So my dad went upstairs and he ended up going into one of our guest bedrooms, which was not a room that we really ever went into because of course we all had our own bedroom, so it was just an extra room for when we had my grandparents come stay with us or cousins or whatever. So no one ever really went in there. So he went in there and he found a woman that was completely under the covers, in the bed, but completely under all the covers and blankets, pillows all around her, and she was just asleep in our guest bedroom. And so my dad kind of woke her up, and she basically said that she fell asleep after the open house, and she was sorry, but she fell asleep. And it was really, really bizarre because she was almost so calm and normal about it. And I remember my dad said he wasn't that threatened because it was an old lady, or she wasn't an old lady, but she was an older woman. So it wasn't as threatening, I guess, as I don't know, some creepy guy or something. But I remember they said she just kind of got up and got her purse and left. And I remember my parents watched her walk away from our house because they were curious where she was going. And she had parked her car just kind of up the street and just got in her car and drove off. And I'm pretty sure my parents never called the cops or anything because I said, she did just get up and leave. But it does make me wonder how long she would have stayed there if we never noticed she was up there. Would she have stayed the whole night? Why was she asleep in the bed? Was she on drugs or something? It's just not a very normal thing to go into someone's house and get into their bed and fall asleep. So that was very weird and creepy. And ever since that incident happened, my parents actually never had open houses anymore. They would do private showings of the house, so you'd have to make an actual appointment with the realtor to come look at the house. They no longer wanted just anyone who saw the open house advertising it to be able to come and just look through our house, which I think is probably a pretty good idea because now that I think about it, that idea is very, very creepy. So this next story took place when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and we had a family friend that was they were moving out of state, and I remember they had a housekeeper and a nanny, and they told my parents about her and wondered if we wanted her to come work for us because they were moving and they could no longer employ her. So she did. She came to work for us, and she was really good with cooking and cleaning, and then she was supposed to kind of watch Molly and I like a babysitter because both my parents were had full-time jobs, so they weren't home always. but she was a little bit kind of like scary and just like a little bit mean. So she kind of ended up not being like a very good babysitter, and they kind of ended up not really using her as a babysitter anymore, but she would just kind of help keep up the house and stuff. And so they actually ended up letting her live in our guest house, which was not attached to our house, but it was right behind our house. And so she lived there, and she didn't have to pay any rent or anything. She just, you know, helped us keep our house clean and stuff, and that was like, I guess, what paid for her rent. So anyways, a few months went by, and she just kind of increasingly got very angry and a little bit like hostile towards my parents. I remember there was one time my dad was watching TV, and he was watching a football game. I think it might have actually been the Super Bowl. It was like a big game, I remember. And she came in to vacuum, and he was like, oh, like, can you vacuum later? Like, I'm watching this game. Like, I really want to see this. And she just kind of acted as if she didn't understand him and began to keep vacuuming. And I remember he asked her a few times, he was like, can you please not do that right now? Like, I'm trying to watch this. And she became really angry and just started yelling at him. And I remember my mom wasn't home at the time, and when mom got home, the housekeeper lady, she started like yelling at my mom and telling her like how mean my dad was, and that my dad was a bad man and all this stuff. And just to like preface the story, my dad is like the nicest guy ever, like so sweet. And she literally just for some reason like targeted my dad. Like, she just did not like my dad. I think she kind of just didn't really like men in general. I remember whenever like someone would come over to the house, like someone's father or something, or like a family friend, or like my uncle or whatever, she would just like act really weird. So anyways, she was just kind of getting increasingly difficult to deal with. I remember she would just be kind of rude to my parents and almost act as if she didn't understand what they were saying when like she didn't want to understand, if that makes sense. So anyways, eventually they decided that they didn't want her to work for us anymore, and so they tried to like get rid of her in a nice way. My parents are very caring, and they always try to help people out, especially if they feel like someone's kind of in need and kind of like needs a little bit of help. They're always like the first people to do that. So they were trying to help, like, you know, convince her that like she could get other work in the neighborhood, and there were other people that needed her more than we did and all this kind of stuff. And she kind of just basically said she wouldn't leave. She was just really upset about it, but she was really angry. And my parents were just starting to get a little creeped out and just kind of a weird vibe about it. So remember one day my parents went to go to the guest house where she lived, and they were going to go talk with her, and she happened to not be home at the time, which was kind of weird because she lived there. So they went inside to like the guest house, which of course was like, we owned it. And they went in, and above the door was a sawed-off shotgun, and my dad actually pulled it down, and it was loaded. And my parents don't believe like in having guns in the house, and she had this like sawed-off shotgun loaded above her like door, which was very creepy. And I remember when my parents like confronted her about it, she got very just kind of scary about it, and she was just really like defensive. And so they ended up calling the cops to get her to leave because she like literally like would not leave, and it just kind of got to be a very tense like creepy situation once they knew that she had a gun. And that was just a very eerie thing. I also remember that my parents said before they tried to like fire her and get rid of her, they called her son, and I remember somehow they got his number, and he was probably like in his 30s or something, and they called him, and he basically said, my mother is very dangerous, but I don't speak with her. Please don't call me again about her. And like that's what her own son told my parents. And so I think after that was when they really got very freaked out and really just didn't want anything to do with her anymore. And the creepiest part of this story is after she did eventually leave our guest house and she no longer worked for us, she was walking around just like our neighborhood, and I guess she was just walking like to find different jobs to work at and stuff. She didn't have a car, so she would just walk from like house to house. And I used to see her like whenever we would drive home and stuff, just walking around like the neighborhood area. And she did this probably for like the next like 4 or 5 years. And then we moved to a new house, and one day Molly and I were just like playing around in the entry of our house, and the doorbell rang, and we answered it, and guess who it was? It was this lady. She didn't know that this was our new house. She was just knocking like door to door asking if anyone needed someone as a housekeeper, and it was her. And I remember I kind of just froze. Like, I recognized her, but I don't know if she really recognized me because I was a bit grown up at this point. But I yelled for my dad to come downstairs, and when he came downstairs, she saw him and her eyes just got huge, and she just like didn't say anything and just walked away. And that was the last we ever saw or heard from her. So this is the last story that I'm going to share with you. This happened when Molly and I were about 10 years old, and this was really, really sad. So we had two little bunny rabbits. We had a black and a white one, and we loved these bunny rabbits so much. They were super friendly, like almost like dogs. Like they would like run up into your lap and like sit with you and stuff, and they were just so nice and cute. And so every morning Molly and I would get up really early before school, probably at like 6 a.m. or 6:30. We would go out and we'd feed the bunnies. We had like this big hutch thing that my parents bought, and it was really, really secure. It had like 2 different levels, and you had to like unlock this thing that was like really confusing to unlock. It actually took Molly and I a lot of practice to be able to unlock it, and it was like outside, but it was on like a protected deck, so it was really close to our house. It was under like this awning thing, and we actually had a workout room that kind of opened up into it, if that makes sense. And like our house is all fenced in and stuff, so they were pretty much safe out there. And like I said, their cage was like a really, really nice built like wooden hutch with like this like lock and all this stuff. Anyways, I had to kind of explain that before I tell you what actually happened. So about, I think we had them for probably like 8 or 9 months, like a long time. So it just became a routine for us to go to bed and feed them, and we'd play with them throughout the day, and then we'd wake up in the morning for school and go check on them, feed them again, whatever. So one day in the morning we got up to go feed them, and one of the rabbits was missing. The black one was gone, and the white one was still in the cage, which was really creepy. But the cage was completely locked, and there was like this little toy. It was like this little rubber toy thing that I swear I did not put in there. My sister said she didn't put in there. My parents said they didn't put in there either. But the rabbit was gone, and there was no like evidence that it like, you know, an animal attacked it or something, and there wasn't any blood, wasn't any fur, and the thing was like completely locked. Like no one had opened it, and I really don't think an animal could have opened it at all. It was a very difficult cage to unlock. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking, oh, well, it probably just died and your parents moved it and didn't want to tell you. My parents swear up and down to this day that they didn't do that, and I remember the look on my dad's face when I came to him and I was like, hey, like Oreo's gone, and my dad's face was just, I don't know, it looked very confused, and he came outside and he almost looked a little bit creeped out that someone had been like that close to our house. So I still to this day don't know what happened. I mean, I guess someone just took our rabbit, but it is a creepy thought to think that someone came up like onto our deck where like literally it was super like close to our house. Like our sliding glass door was like right there. And then from then on, of course, we kept our rabbit inside, but that was a really creepy incident, and we never found out what happened to that, so who knows. But so those are all the creepy stories I'm going to share with you guys today. Thank you so much. Let me know if you liked this video and if you want to see more like it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!